Still big, expensive TV.
I mean,
right, so
after
you
the
can-
annoying lady yelled at us for
That's
recording, I
the
just figured
worst.
we'd leave in this. Bill Squire can afford big TVs, Joe.
Yeah, and I don't want to have to deal with the maintenance. I could get a fish tank like that. I'm sorry, I've been watching I Think You Should Leave, so I'm in,
So have I.
I'm in that mode where I just want to yell at people. I could afford a fish tank. I just don't want to deal with the upkeep for a saltwater fish
You
tank.
think I can't afford fish tanks?
You think I can't afford a fish tank? I'll get a fish tank right now, Joe.
Or since I was a little baby boy, I wanted a fish tank. Dude,
Welcome to the Joe and Bill Squire podcast. I'm Ray Roberts.
Did you watch the whole season? Sorry,
I'm like watching it for the second time already. Like it's
oh my god, that's what I'm gonna do. As soon as we're done with this, I'm just gonna rewatch all of I Think You Should Live.
Is this the show with the guy in the hot dog suit that I see all the time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll wait until the next time I come to Cleveland, and that'll be our next show. You can make me hip to, Joe.
What was the first one?
Formula.
Oh, that's right.
I haven't got into that one yet, but I heard that's a great show.
It's if you don't know anything about Formula One, I think that's when it's the best.
Yeah.
Because I didn't think it was a real show.
Like a lot of drugs over like 3 days of a weekend, and that's all you do is just drugs and watch Formula One racing.
Yeah,
that sounds fun.
It's
like, do drugs enhance the Formula One racing experience that much?
1,000%.
Okay.
Yeah, because especially if you're coming in blind, like if you come in blind and somebody just turns this on like Clockwork Orange style, like you're forced to watch this because he's letting you sleep at his house for free, and then you have no choice. And then he's like, hey, isn't this show great? And then for the first 4 hours, you're like, no, the show sucks. Then like the 5th hour, you're Stockholm syndromed into it. And then you change your entire life because of it.
Wait, so it takes 4 episodes to get good? Or does
pretty
it
much
depend on how much drugs you do watching it?
I think it does it depend on, because I started watching it because I got the COVID vaccine and I was like, I need something to get me through this, and it was Formula One. And then Ray came over like the day after I got vaccinated, and I was like, hey, I'm too tired to do anything, but check this out. And then we just watched it for 4 hours straight. I don't know.
Well, I'll give it a shot, but if I don't like it, I'm coming for you, Joe.
That's fair.
Coming for you.
Could you also go for Ray, or is it just me?
I feel like it's more on you because you introduced it to Ray. So like, if I didn't know who had introduced it to Ray, then I would have to go to Ray and find out, who introduced it to him, and then figure it out.
It's like finding out who gave you herpes.
Yeah, exactly.
Really,
but since I already know that you're the one that pushed this on him, you're the pusher man, I have to come at you real hard. Yeah.
Should we introduce our distinguished guest?
Yeah. Sorry.
He's kind of an up and comer in the Cleveland comedy scene. I knew as soon as I saw him at Barrio in Lakewood, I knew that this kid had whatever it is. This kid had it. So I knew that he'd be somewhere someday.
And you just saw me eating there. It wasn't even in a comedy show. I was just there on a Tuesday eating. And he's like, this guy's got it. Just the way he eats tacos. If that was a microphone, I'd be like,
his mouth.
Mm-hmm.
Bill Squire just hijacked our bit and made it better. Just instantly. But no, WMMS, Bill Squire show. Is this your second album coming out? Third, fourth? What is this next one?
All right. So this one is, all right, let's go through every single one because I've done a lot of things. So the first one that I ever released was called Sarcasm Bus. Then I did, what was next? Just Say Your Jokes, which is also like on
very good
YouTube and stuff like that. And like that's one that like there's some jokes on there. I'm like, and I showed them to Joe. And he's like, oh no, those are fine. Like I thought they were like cancel worthy, but some people think they might be. I don't know, but that doesn't matter. It's funny. Then I did Crowded, and then after I did Crowded, I did a project called Bill Squire's Perfect 10, where I released 10 new minutes every month for a year.
I remember that.
Yeah, so that still exists. It's on YouTube, and it's I think it's just on YouTube at this point, and I think like maybe Pandora, but
Do you still use any of those jokes? Because
I
that's a good. I mean, just to jump straight into comedy talk, because it's
yeah.
like, I mean, you have to constantly be writing, and if it's 10 minutes every month, you're just like, it doesn't matter if it's good, but you have to come out with good chunks out of that, right?
No, I came out with some great chunks that like so what and then some of that stuff developed into stuff that's on this album, stuff that's on my album after that was
Decisions
aren't my thing, and then that was in 2018, and then I did The Legend of Bill Squire, which came out in 2019, and then 2020 I put out like a short little like 15-minute album, like an EP, that was just to put something out in 2020, just because it was such a depressing year and I had a good recording, so I used something, and it's good. So but this is my first time I've ever worked with a like place, like a record label.
So all the other stuff was just you putting it out on your own?
Yeah.
Oh, that's wild. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
How did you feel about the 15-minute EP thing? Because I mean, it's not on the same level, because yours was probably not just you on your couch bored on like an afternoon, going through old recordings and putting it up last minute. But like, so many people gave me shit for just throwing like jokes up, because I was bored. I was like, do you know what? I'm gonna try to do like sound editing, all that stuff. So I threw it up, and I got some shit because I was like, hey, I'm excited about this. These are jokes that worked that night. I think they're shareable. It's only 15 minutes, and people still like were shitty about it. Did anybody give you
those
crap about it?
people and the people that were shitty about it were comedians that have multiple albums out and have done big things, or were just other?
That's a valid point.
Yeah.
You make a good point. It's not like it's not like I hold it, and I say this all the time to people, is like, we're not like best of friends or anything like that, but I knew Bill Squire before he was Bill Squire Radio. I know Bill Squire hanging out at Stone Tavern, like being just great at comedy. And it's like one of those, like, I'm sure Bill Squire, even if I'm on your radar, has seen me go through like being a shithead and being a giant asshole and then caring what people think. And now I'm like in this like super like forgiving myself kind of deal and like starting fresh. So it's not one of those things that like weighs on me, but I was just
but
because you did
it's a
something
weird
similar.
reaction to trying to do something, instead of people being like, hey, that's cool, you tried something, we appreciate the effort. And it's not like you were trying to, I mean, make millions of dollars. You're just like, hey, I put something out, give it a shot. And I think that's something that is really scary to people. And so when people see you doing stuff and trying, and even just trying to produce stuff on your own, like they're very put off by it, because that means that they could be doing something, but they're not. And so instead of trying to figure out how they can do something, they just want to stop you from doing something and try to hold you down, because there is a chance that you did that and you learn something, and then the next time you put something out, it's going to be even better, and the next time you create something, it's going to be even better. And so their whole thing is, well, I don't feel like doing that work, I'm just going to ridicule him for putting something out because I don't have the guts to do it.
Do you feel like there's like a point where you put out enough stuff where you have like a fan base where that gets better? Like you put out your first thing and it's just kind of, oh, really? Damn.
Well, and the thing is, because like I put out so much stuff, and this is like, decisions aren't my thing. I promoted pretty hard, but like the EP that I did, and what's it called, The Legend of Bill Squire, I just kind of put them out there because I wanted them to be out there. Like they're kind of moment in time stuff, like especially The Legend of Bill Squire, like a lot of that stuff dealt with a breakup that I was going through in that year. And like I really loved the material. Like it's not the tightest set, but like there's some really funny bits in that stuff. So I was happy to just have it exist in that form, and I didn't like put it out to sell 1 million copies or anything like that. I just wanted to make sure that those jokes will live on in some form. And you know, I've taken some of them and I've reworked them and put them in, and that's kind of thing too, is like people are like, oh, you can't do that from like set to. I'm like, in the day and age of streaming, you can do whatever you want. And so
Yeah.
there's versions of jokes in my new album that are from all sorts of like eras in my comedy career, because I did this one as a clean album. So I was cherry picking some stuff and rewriting some stuff and writing new stuff. And I just was I'm not worried about it being on old albums because it's all different. It's like the same, but it's different, if that makes sense. Like there's nothing that's exactly the same as it was on any other album.
And I think that's like, and it's one of those weird things from moving where this might sound like a slight, but I promise that it's not. Where it's like I can be like, oh, like people that I know, like Mary Santor or Bill Squire, or any of like the list of the people that we know that are like killers, but then you go 3 hours any direction and they're like, who? And you're like, come on, guys. And so like it's out there, and like somebody from like Russia can find it and become like a super fan. Where for the longest I was worried like, oh, if I put that out, I'll never be able to say it again. But then you're like, who gives a shit? Like,
yeah, who gives
cares.
a shit? And you can always do it better. You can always do it, and especially when you're doing it on your own dime. Like if you self-release stuff, then just keep putting it out until you get it right. I don't think it's that big of a deal. And like for Pandora, like you'd think I would get a lot more plays from places like Cleveland and Akron, but I get 20,000 plays on Pandora every month, and it's usually like Oakland is where like one of like my biggest areas, like for like in Texas, and so it's just interesting how that stuff gets out there. And so there are people that like listen to my stuff every day across the country that still like they just hear my voice, but they don't know who the fuck I am.
That's
but
wild,
they, they're enjoying it to some degree because they keep playing it.
Is there, so when you put out, first of all, how far in a comedy were you when you put out the first album? And then do you think that helped you like get shows and stuff after you did it?
No, that's the thing about comedy albums is like, unless you have the best album, like I mean, even Mary was talking about this, like she did such an amazing job promoting her album and selling albums and doing everything. And then she's like 2 weeks later, she's like, no one gives one fuck. Like no one cares. I'm like, well, that's how it goes, because albums aren't like, I mean, unless you have like Chad Daniels level of success where he put it on, he got it on Pandora and he gets 1 million streams a day.
Yes.
And so when he gets that many, then it brings a lot of attention to him. So if you can like, that's kind of the best case scenario. So that didn't happen with any of my albums where like, yeah, like there'd be a little bit of uptick in people wanting to come and see me, but it wasn't like bookers were like, hey, we heard this album, we got to get you on a show.
Do you think, just because you said like the Cleveland Akron thing, because I think one of the cool things that I talk about to people, and it's easier when it's not me, but like being on the radio and in those areas, that obviously helps you sell tickets in that area, but does it like not kneecap you, but like stop you from branching out at any point because you have to like be there for that? Or do you like, I know it's good and it's a job and it's like one of those stable jobs in entertainment that nobody ever gets, and you got it by being funny and working hard. But like, do you think at some point like it would ever get in the way of you like doing, because you're on the Alan Cox show and you have the Bill Squire show podcast, but like you're on somebody else's thing with somebody else's name. At any point does that like, obviously this isn't on the record, nobody listens to this, but like is that something that like you ever cross your mind at some point?
Well, I mean, obviously like everybody thinks about that, like what's the next step, because it could also, it's Alan's show and he might someday go someplace else. So I always feel like that's, like they encouraged us to start podcasts at iHeartRadio. So I was like, okay, well, I'm going to take this and run with it and figure out what I need to do to create a successful podcast. And then when it comes to stand up, like it takes so much to get a following nationwide that like I'm happy to have one in the Cleveland area, but it's really difficult to imagine it getting to like a nationwide level. So I'm happy to have consistency here and stuff like that. But if it, it's more of a bridge that I'll cross when I get there. Like if something takes off, or if I was basically the way things have gone, there hasn't been any reason for me to want to even leave the Alan Cox show, because it's so much fun. I make good money and I like working with him. I definitely wouldn't want to work on another radio show with anybody but Alan. Like I think the relationship that we've developed over the last 8.5 years has been very just good for both of us, in especially me, to just have somebody that, like, we have chemistry. We know how to just, even if we don't have anything to talk about, we can find something to talk about. And I think that's definitely rare, and we don't have to have like a contentious style where we argue with each other. We can just kind of riff and goof off and have a good time. So
and that's one of the cool things about
yeah.
like your guys' show, because I mean, shout out to my buddy Jimmy. He's going to be pumped about this, because I mean, we listened to Alan Cox show like when it was Alan, Chad, and Erica, and like they would do like comedy shows in like the basement of like Kent State like student center. Yeah, like that was like my introduction to stand up, was because Chad ran that show, and then like Alan was there, and then I think you've probably done it a few times.
Yeah, I did it a couple times.
Yeah, so it was like one of those, like, that's like a lot of people's like introduction to comedy. But it's got to be like very weird to like end up seeing that, like, it's like a popular show, but it's positive. Like you have like the RMG guys, and nothing against them. It's just like, because a lot of people love that, but like they're like shitting on each other all the time, and you guys just like play off of each other. Now obviously there's like jokes and fun stuff, but like it's like an overall positive show, which is weird in 2021.
Yeah, and I think that's just the environment that we kind of want to go to work in every day. Like, Alan kind of sets the culture, and he works very hard to put together a show. And I mean, we do go at pound cake from time to time, but that's more from a place of like, hey man, you say you want to be a professional broadcaster and like have your own show someday. We'd like to see some initiative, and then he doesn't always show that initiative. So but it's just fun. And I think it's just like, I don't want to go to work walking on eggshells, worried that someone's going to tell a story about me that I don't want to be told to, thousands of people.
Because I was going to say, is it like weird when you got that job coming into that situation? Because it's like you're not really friends with them yet, so you kind of just have to like have that chemistry off the bat because you're on the radio. Like Ray and I were like, yeah, we're good at hanging out. Let's do a podcast. But then you were like, you just had to come in and like kind of fit in almost.
Yeah.
Well, and weird. That was a weird time, not to jump on your answer, but that was like on the heels of like, not to like drum up drama or whatever, but Chad was like a buddy for a while. Yeah. Then like you started filling in when he started being a shithead, and like all of that stuff. And then of course it got like contentious, like that, all of that on top of doing that too had to be weird.
Yeah, there was a lot going on. But what it comes down to, like, I was just trying to get a job. Like, I mean, I was out doing, like, I had dates, like I was doing really well on the road, but it was very hard. Being on the road's hard. And I was presented with an opportunity to have a consistent paycheck and be like home around my kids more and stuff like that. And it was a hard decision to make because, like, Chad was a friend, but his reaction to it was so strange, and like he was so angry and so like felt betrayed. And I'm like, I'm not trying to betray you. I'm just trying to take advantage of this situation.
Job opportunity, yeah.
And
he was my first comedy hero. So I mean, that changed quickly, obviously.
Yeah, so that's a funny phrase. But again, like he
was your first comedy hero, like not like Chris Farley or somebody.
No, like that's how I met Savat. Was my boss at the time thought that I was calling Savat Chad Zumach, and I just wanted to meet him because I'd seen him do comedy 1,000 times, and I was like, this is not even possible that like a guy who does comedy is like in a spot that I would be at. And then like now 6 years later or whatever, you're like, anybody can walk up and grab a microphone.
Anybody can walk up. I mean, it's well, comedy's the closest to, like, you kind of have to be close to that level, like, Jerry Seinfeld and Chris Rock aside, or Dave Chappelle, but like if you're still trying to figure things out, or just build it, like, like Mark Norman's a guy that will go and do hilarities, and then he'll be like, hey, is there another mic? I got some stuff I want to work on. And so like if you're like a touring road comic that's, starting to sell tickets, like you might hit up another mic in that city because you're just trying to work on stuff. And so we've had that happen from the like through because of hilarities in the improv for years at mics around Cleveland, which is very cool. But
yeah, I know like one of the like right after I started doing actual stand-up, Joe Coy came through like the East End one time.
Oh man, that was the best night.
And I was like so nervous that I just like gave him like the most awkward high five of his entire life. And then someone was like, hey, you should come on his tour bus. And I was like, not after that high five. Like I didn't earn it. And I just walked home.
That was so much fun. So he came to East End, and yeah, he's like, I just want to hang out and like just chill. And I was like, but do you want to do a set? And like I went up, and he's like, I see him standing in the corner. I'm like, Joe, do you want to do a set now? He's like, yeah, I saw your set and made me want to get on stage. So he came on and he did a set, and it was great. And then we went on his tour bus and went and sang karaoke. And then we went to my friends, and it was just like a wonderful, like surreal experience to just be like, hey, this guy sold out the Roxino tomorrow, but tonight he's just taking local Cleveland comics around on his tour bus and just buying drinks for everybody. He bought like the entire, like he paid everyone's tab, because I was like, he just didn't. It blew his mind how inexpensive drinking in Cleveland was, and especially at East End where like you can get Patron for $4, and he's like, how much is this? And I was like, Patron's $4.75 or something like that, and he's like, just put the whole bar on my tab.
The whole bar? He paid for the whole bar?
He paid for the whole bar.
Yeah, Cleveland's got like that reputation. I remember I went to DC like years ago when I was like in heavy party days, and like they were like, how are you handling our alcohol prices? Because like a pack of cigarettes was $15, like a beer, like a PBR was like $6 or $7, and they're like, we love it when we go to Cleveland because we'll just like they'll just stock up because everything's so much cheaper.
So cheap. Going back real quick though to like
go for it.
The process of getting on the Alan Cox show, like that chemistry had to come, but like it's not just chemistry, but it's like knowing how to do radio. And I kind of knew it from doing interviews on shows. Like I was a traveling comedian that would pop into shows, and I knew you had to bring energy and it had to have something interesting to say. And you didn't always have to be funny. There's a lot of different things. And so I auditioned against a bunch of other comics. And so like people that don't like me will always be like, oh, you just fell into this job. You only got it because of this and this and this. I'm like, hey, I had a fucking hell of a time getting that job because there's really funny people that were also going out for that job. And there wasn't one night that I felt like I had it sewn up until I officially like signed the paper, like till I actually like became a member of like the Alan Cox show. Because even like there was like 2 weeks where it was basically me, but it took a while for them to get the paperwork through to actually hire me. It was the longest 2 weeks of my life. It was terrifying, but it finally came through, and it's been a really fun ride.
So when that happened, did you have like road gigs scheduled still that you had to like finish?
I canceled a bunch of them.
Canceled?
Like
okay.
I was happy. Like once I actually was like the guy, like Alan told me I was the guy, but I hadn't signed yet. Like I had a week in Michigan, and I'm like, man, do I want to go? And I was like, you know what? I'm here for this job. Like I'm here to do this job now, and I'm not going to be the road comic anymore. So I wanted to show him that I was committed. So I canceled that weekend, and I was like, I'm going to be here. This is where I want to be. I don't want to like be like missing half the shows because I'm out doing road work, which they were open to me doing that, but I didn't want to do that because I thought it'd be more beneficial to just be there on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And again, I was just like burnt out on the road. Like I did the road I started in 2004 and I started doing the road pretty heavy in 2005, like not good gigs either. Like I was just on the road. So for, until 2013 when I got hired, that's a long time to be just driving and staying in hotels and sleeping in cars and just being exhausted all the time.
Yeah. What was the first like road gig you ever did where you're like, this is it?
Well, the first week I ever worked like a paid gig on the road was I was hosting at a comedy club in Westminster, Colorado called
Oh
Wits
wow.
End, and that's just like north of Denver, I believe. And it was a show with two local people, and then I was the out of towner. So like the headliner was local, the feature act was local, and so I got to stay in the comedy condo all by myself, which was like wild. So like that was something that was cool because I was 23 at the time. And I'm like, look at me, I'm in a condo, just being a comedian, staying at a condo, just like I've read in books and heard about stories about and stuff like
Yeah.
that. So that was really cool. And then that was the same week that Mitch Hedberg died. And so I was like, oh man, one of my comedy heroes just died. And now I'm doing comedy on the road. Like this is the most embarrassing thing that I have, but like I was like, it's up to me now. Like I had that thought. It's the worst. Yeah, but it was yeah, it was nice to be on the road. So like I would string along these like gigs, and like I loved it at first. And there's still a part of me that really likes going on the road. It's just not as like I need a lot more amenities now, where like back then, like staying in a condo was the dream. And now I'm like, that's disgusting. I need a nice hotel. I need it to be dog friendly. And I just need I'm too high maintenance these days.
I mean, I did like my first out of town show in Sandusky a couple weeks ago, and I stayed in like the Wolf Inn. It's not the Great Wolf Lodge, it was like a knockoff. It was like everything you described, and it was like abysmal. And I was like, they had like a office chair in there, and I just sat in it, and I was like, we did it.
Yeah, we're here now.
Yeah.
I did that when I came back the first time. Just like I was going to be in town for Christmas, and then we just canceled plans because COVID was still happening. And I flew in, and I was gonna stay at my buddy's house. And then I was like, do you know what? We're not doing this right. Like I need to stay in a hotel. Like I want my room. I was also supposed to like interview with somebody on like the Browns podcast or Zoltan. And I was supposed to interview him. I was like, we need good internet. So I found like a $30 a night hotel. And I was like, all right, this is like, I'm a professional, but it was just like the host the amateur contest at Funny Stop. So like I flew in and spent money and like got a rental car just to like host the thing. And I was like, this is stupid.
So I drove to Colorado for that gig, and it was ridiculous. Like
I did that drive last year. It's like 18 hours.
It's so far. And then, but I had 2 weeks. So I did those 2 weeks. And then what I would do is, as I'd come home from places, I would stop in cities and do sets and try and find more work. And that worked really well. So like, cause I had nowhere to be. I was just doing stand-up comedy. And at that point, still living with my parents. And then when in 2006, I moved into my own place, and it was like $230 a month. And by that time, I was working regularly at the Improv. I'd started working at Hilarities. And so just as a host, I could get pretty regular work with both of those clubs, and that would fill up my schedule. And then I'd go and I did a lot of stuff in like North Dakota and Minnesota. And, that's just where like the bookers that I was working for booked a lot of stuff out there. So I just go out there for a few weeks, and like one gig would pay for my rent for the month. So it was like pretty lucrative really at that time.
Is it weird being a regular at one of the best clubs in the entire country? Like it's one of those weird things where like we hold the Improv on like a pedestal because nothing against Pete and the Funny Stop, but like anybody can go down and get a set at the Funny Stop. But like getting like an actual weekend at Hilarities was like, and I was just hosting, and I had to like call in favors and like drove over like all that stuff to get on there. But it was like one of those like, all right, I finally got to do the main stage on a full weekend. And like, does that ever get out of your mind where you're just like, all right, this is where I'm comfortable, instead of it being like, this is fucking Hilarities?
I mean, so let me tell you a story. So Nick, when you headline, or you do
Yeah.
stuff like that, like or just big things, or just like as a sign of respect, Nick gets you a bat from a place called Johnnyville Woods, and they're bats that are engraved. And he gave me mine back in December when I was just hosting for Mary's podcast. You can see it, and it's got WMS on it and everything like that. Not Mary's podcast, Mary's album recording. But he gave me one that weekend. And, you know, I worked there a lot when the pandemic was coming, you know, I worked there a lot over the years anyway, but like that was a big time where I would be there, whatever they needed, whether they needed me to headline or host or feature, whoever it was, I was there. And so Nick gave me that bat and I burst into tears. Like I couldn't hold back because that place means so much to me that I'll never take it for granted. And the way that they've helped me develop and help me stay fresh as a comic is just it's the best thing. And like the relationships I've been able to build with them, the people in that building and comedians over the years, and just it's the best club, and I'll never take it for granted.
And it rules,
and I'll
because
fight anybody that says their club's better.
Well, like I did
I'll fight
a
'em too.
weekend there, like straight up. Like I've done since I've moved up here. Like the closest like club is Skyline in Appleton, and I'll go up there, and that was like, and again, nothing against the Funny Stop, but like I'm used to like working the Funny Stop, where like the bar's right there, and anybody
Mhm.
can come like hang out and like talk to you, and you're getting yelled at on the stage and stuff, which I think like it helps develop a thick skin.
Yeah.
But like the first weekend I did at Skyline, I was like, oh, this is there's a green room and I don't have to pay for Diet Coke. And like if I need something else, like I can go up there and get it. And then you go to fucking Hilarities and they're like, hey, do you want steak for your
Yeah, do you want
free
steak?
meal?
Do you want
Yeah. And I'm like,
I mean,
host
and
it.
I like Skyline. I've been to Skyline. I think that's a great comedy club.
They're great. I love them.
And like the great audiences. And I think that's really the food and everything, like that's a bonus when it comes to
Right.
Hilarities. But what makes a comedy club great is an audience that is there for comedy, not just a night to binge drink, not just a night to just get out of the house, but they want to see comedy. And I think there's clubs that have developed that crowd because they care about the art. So like they'll pack shows because the audience knows that they're like, I don't know who this person is, but I'm going to go because I appreciate the people that they put on stage here. And I think Skyline does that. I think Ann Arbor Comedy Showcase, there's countless clubs that do that type of show. And it's just nice to see. And that wasn't always the case. That's more the case now. You know, you got like the Helium chain and stuff like that. But it like there was a while, especially when I started, where the club, they of course they all want to sell drinks and make money and move food, all that stuff. That's important. But they over the years, I think clubs have realized like, oh, cultivating the audience for this is just as important as the people that we put on stage. So we want to pack the room, but we want them to come here and have a great time. And the way they have a great time is not by getting so drunk that they all get thrown out or the comics don't have a good. They want there to be a reputation of like, oh, this is a great place to work. So I think that's those are the clubs that have lasted through the years. You know, the Acme's, the Go Bananas, all those places where comics are like, hey, I'm gonna come here, even though I could go to a theater. They'll get somebody that will come through there and just do a weekend because they love that club that much.
Why don't more people do what Go Bananas does and have that like 1 foot off the floor raised stage instead of like a full stage?
Because everybody thinks that they have to make these clubs like theaters, and they want to pack them out and they want to look nice. And like you see what they've done with the improvs, like the Improv in Cleveland used to have a stage more similar to that. Like it was a low stage, low ceilings, and when you got laughs in there, it was fucking thunder. Like it was like it would give you chills when you get a big laugh in there. And it just, but that it wasn't sustainable in a lot of ways to have clubs be that small, because you have to pack them out and make money, and comics were making more money, and especially with the development of Netflix and people then like, okay, we're competing with theaters now more than we're competing with like garage, like bar shows.
That's true.
So
Yeah,
you
because
have
that
to,
like I did
so
that
you
Go
have to
Bananas
level
once.
up.
Yeah, and you're like, but it was perfect because like you're elevated, you're still
Yeah.
up there, but like you're just ahead over everybody else, and you're like
Mhm.
in that room, and there's like tons of room in there. I don't know if that's just like the only place that's gonna get away with doing that still because it's huge, and I think they're renovating it, so it's probably
Yeah.
gone anyways. But it was just like you're in that, so it almost feels like that bar show, but you can tell it's professional because
Mhm.
they've got like the good sound, they've got you a little bit higher,
Yeah.
instead of just like in a corner somewhere.
I mean, it's a good spot, and I like clubs like that. I think New York has a lot of clubs like that. I mean, that's what the Cellar is. If you've ever been to the Comedy Cellar,
Oh.
it is the smallest room you've ever seen get that many people in it, but it's packed. It's low ceilings, low stage, and it's just the best place to see comedy because everybody is just laser focused on the stage because there's nothing else to distract you. And then you also get the fact that you're in New York City where you're getting the best comics in the world coming on stage one after another, doing 15-minute sets, just fucking destroying. And then someone else comes up and you see like a famous person, he's like, oh my God, David Tell's on stage. And then some guy that's you've never heard of, we have because we're comics and we know, we're always paying attention, but somebody that like isn't like a household name will go up there and just do just as well because it's that level of that's the audience in the culture that they've created for that room.
So this is kind of like a slightly different topic, but I've always wondered this and I kind of wanted to ask you about it. So as long as I've been doing comedy, like when I go to Hilarities, like the local staples that you always see there are like you, John, Mary, Brian Kenny, Polk. Who was like around doing comedy in Cleveland before you guys, or did you guys kind of start get that whole ball rolling?
Well, so Jason Lawhead and Mike Farrell were instrumental in creating a scene for Cleveland. So those are guys that they used to work at Hilarities. And then they ran a show called the Grimy 90 at Bossa Vita Lounge in Lakewood, which is next to the KFC, but now it's like some taco place.
Oh yeah, the
And so
Tatiana
that
Tapatia.
was, yeah. And
really
that place
good.
was like awesome, like this great comedy show every Wednesday. And that's like, that was the first goal. Like that's the first show. Like, you guys talk about like East End or Great Lakes and like wanting to get on those shows. Like that was the first show that I was like, once I get on this show, it's going to feel more real. Like I'm doing something. And so we go there on Wednesdays and like, I eventually got up and it was awesome, but like you could still smoke back then. So like it was just people drinking and smoking and you could barely even see the stage because there was so much smoke in the fucking room because it was all like bar people, like bar industry people that would come out after their shifts and the show would start at like 10:30, 11 o'clock. It was crazy though. And Jason Lawhead and Mike Farrell created that. So those guys were around a little and they had only been doing it like a year before me.
Mm-hmm.
So like, but they felt, then Ryan Dalton was one of them that, Maria Borgio, Joe Howard. So there was that class, but then there was also working comics like Charlie Wiener and Mike Veneman. Mike Veneman used to teach a comedy class and I took his class when I was like 6 months in and I got to like perform it. That was the first time I ever performed at the Funny Stop when it was still Hilarities in Cuyahoga Falls. And that was fantastic. That was like one of the best shows I ever had to that. I mean, especially to that point, but there are people like that that would just, he kind of took me under his wing and helped me get booked and stuff like so. So there was a scene before all of us, but it kind of grew naturally because there's more demand for it, and then there was more ways to promote because of social media. And but I appreciate all the things that those guys did to make it possible for us to get on stage in those early days and really figure out what the hell we were doing.
Yeah, because I think I was driving home from Hilarities one night. I was just kind of like thinking about that, and I was like, maybe we just didn't have comedy before these guys, like because I just didn't know what came before.
Yeah.
All that.
Well, and then if you go back even further, like you go back to like the 80s, there was where Progressive Field is now. There was a place called the Cleveland Comedy Club, and it's basically right where home plate would have been or is now.
Mhm.
And that was like Drew Carey's stomping grounds and stuff like that. And
I've seen him talk about it before. Like he
Yeah.
said he used to go there like every night and stuff. And
Yep. So there's a lot of iterations of comedy scenes. I mean, Tammy Pescatelli was someone that would do shows here and do very well. And I mean, so that just it's been just a bunch of different generations of people. And
What do you think it is about Cleveland that, because I mean, if you look at just like Northeast Ohio, Cleveland, whatever, however you want to, like, I'm very big on like every city in Northeast Ohio doesn't need to have its own scene. Like, we're all part of the Cleveland scene because it's just so big. But like Caparulo, you said Drew Carey, Steve Harvey, didn't Steve Byrne get started in his Kent State days? Like just the list of Northeast Ohio compared to like everywhere else. Like, it's just a wild list of guys and women who have just done great everywhere. What do you think? Because it's almost like Boston was back in the day. Like, I mean, it's not like 30 of them that run all of the media now, but like you can go anywhere and see Cleveland people from whatever scene actually doing well.
Yeah, I think it's just there's a work ethic to being from a town like Cleveland, like where, you know, there's, if you're in a town like Chicago or you're in a town like New York or LA and like you grow up there and you have a place to go every night, like you can get a little lazy because you take it for granted. So in Cleveland, when you have to put on good shows and you have to learn all these different aspects of doing comedy. So you're not just going up there and doing a show, you're producing a show and you're learning these ins and outs. And so I think that produces, like, just helps you with the business side of things and helps you just want to succeed more too. Is like, you're like, well, I want to get to the point where I don't have to do all that shit. I just want to be able to be the funny guy. And so that's why you get a guy like John Caparulo, who he started here, he goes to LA. And then also I think people are just funny from this area. And I think there would be a lot more if we were taken more seriously. I mean, you see like Jason Banks isn't from Cleveland, but he's from Columbus, and he's blowing up because of his TikTok videos. And he's got like 5 or 6 million followers on TikTok now, and he just sold out like 6 shows at Hilarities, and like the dude's killing it. But like a couple years ago, he auditioned for Just for Laughs, and they strung him along for all this time, and then they go, you're not what we're looking for, and they just went with a bunch of people from the coasts again. So I think it's just, there should honestly, like, as much as there are like successful people from Cleveland out there, there should be way more, because there's just not enough focus. Like people, oh, you're from Cleveland, so we're not gonna take you serious.
It's such a brand too, though. Like, not even a brand, but it's a style. Like Tim Dillon calls it like Midwestern autism, like, which I think hits like right on the head, because like Wisconsin's the Midwest, but like you come here and like we're still the Midwest, so we're nice, but like there's also like that edge to it, like just like that weird Ohio's been shit on for so long edge that like you get to it where like I almost had to learn to, like, especially with handling people. One, I was a shithead anyways, but like dealing with people here where you're like, hey, I want to be on stage no matter what. Like, give me stage time. I don't give a fuck who's here. Like, that's like aggressive to a lot of people, but like you almost have to take a step back because like not everywhere's got like that weird edge to it.
Well, yeah, and I think it is the like little brother syndrome. I mean, I don't know if you guys saw the tweet about New York City being like, oh, cloudy day in New York is better than any day in sunny day in Cleveland. And then like Cleveland people all go in on this tweet, and and rightly so, because people, you know, New York's gonna always be there, and it's always gonna be. But like when you're from a place like Northeast Ohio where things have been down, and you're part of building that back up, and you know your family's from here, and you've seen it go through these waves of economic turmoil, you take some pride in the fact that you can get through tough times. And you know, there's a niceness about us, but there's also like, hey, don't fuck with us either. Don't take advantage of us, because that's when the nice goes away and we get a little bit cranky. And so I think that's what it comes down to. That's where that edge comes from, is just like people trying to take advantage of us and we don't like it.
I was like, anytime I see stuff like that too from like bigger cities, I'm like, oh, you guys are spoiled. Like that's the word I always think of too, and I'm just like, fuck them. Like they have no idea.
Well,
I don't
they're
know.
spoiled, but also like,
Like
I mean,
entitled,
I
maybe. I
lived in
don't
New
know.
York for a bit. I've been to LA. I've been places like, and it's probably because of how I'm programmed from being in Cleveland, but I like being able to get around the city. Like, I don't think there's as much to do in those cities as people lead on, as much as it takes a long time to do them,
Mhm.
because you have to sit in traffic all the time. And like, I mean, anytime I go to New York City, people are like, hey, I'm going to take you to this bar. I'm like, we got bars in Cleveland too, man. And
Yeah.
I kind of like them when they're empty. I kind of like
Yeah.
an empty bar. So I don't need a packed bar. I don't want to be surrounded by people all the time. And that's what you get in a place like New York or LA. Whereas in Cleveland, you can kind of fucking spread out a little bit and have some space to yourself.
Yeah.
I have two more questions,
Oh.
but the most important one, I have paid to see you do comedy, which is like a very, like, it's always like a weird thing to tell people, because like just doing comedy, like I don't remember the last time I paid to go to a comedy show. Just because you, like, when you do it for so long, I paid for Mark Norman last year, so that's a lie. But I paid for a show. I forget who the host was. Brian Kenny was the feature, and you were headlining at the Funny Stop. And Brian Kenny, I think, might be the most underrated person in Cleveland, and I'm glad that he's getting a headline spot at Hilarities. What is it like following somebody like that? Because, like, I know you
It's
know
the
how good he
fucking
is.
worst. It's so hard. I gotta follow him on Saturday, and I'm tired of it.
Dude,
I don't like following Brian. I don't like following Mary. I don't like following John Bruton. I don't like, and I can do it. I'll be fine, but it's hard but I'd rather follow those guys like
Yes.
killers than somebody that, is some sort of like someone that bombs or isn't creative. I think that's a high level show, and Brian Kenny is a fantastic comic, and I agreed that he is underrated. The reason Brian's not famous is because he has medical needs, so he has to have a day job to have health care. But once he makes enough money doing comedy, the dude's gonna blow up, because he's such a good storyteller. He's so clever. He's so charming. Brian's just brilliant. So
his bearskin condom joke is like, anytime somebody asks me what my favorite joke is, it's his bearskin condom joke that I heard 7 years ago.
Yeah.
And I don't even know if he still tells it, and I don't even know if he still would like remember it. But like, that's the joke that I go to like explain how good he is.
You want to hear something crazy? I actually wrote that joke for him.
Oh, you motherfucker. You just ruined. You are my comedy hero now. Welcome to.
I'm kidding. I didn't write that joke.
I thought you were about to look at him and just be like, I don't like that joke anymore. I thought that's what was going to happen. It's like,
no, it's a great joke. They're making them out of bears now.
Yeah, where are they keeping awesome. All these bears?
Big farms of bears.
And it's just like and I'm like, I don't. And that was like when I first started doing mics. So like, you just see how hard it is to come up with that good of a joke. And that was just like a middle of his set joke. That wasn't even like a closer.
The first time Brian did one of my shows, he was like less than a year into it, and he was great from the beginning. And that's like one of the things too, is like guys like Brian and Mary, like they had that performer in them right off the bat. Like if you go back and watch videos of me, like there's one from like I was probably 8 months into doing comedy, and I'm at the Improv, and I'm just like this, like no stage presence whatsoever. I'm like, it's just awkward and nervous, but like I could write jokes, but I wasn't much of a performer at that point. And those guys have been good performers right off the bat, and then the writing's been good right off the bat, and it's really just like just playing the stupid games of this business is, it's one of those things where like if Brian was in LA, Mary was in LA, like they'd be super famous. I feel like because they're just that good.
My I've talked to him about this, but Brian's first show back after COVID was like that East 4th Street showcase they did at Hilarities. And so they came out, we were at that show and they came out with the lineup, and the comic going in front of me was Brian. And I was like really nervous because I was like, oh, Brian's going to go up, he's going to murder. And he was like, oh, I haven't done comedy in like 15 months. I'm going to suck. It's going to be fine. And I was like, okay, that made me feel a little bit better. And then he went up and had like the best set of anyone on that show up until that point.
I was like, how was it to go back up? And he's like, dude, it was great. I just riffed a bunch of stuff and it was fucking fantastic. And I was just like, yeah.
I was like, I'm gonna go talk about a
man.
Volkswagen Beetle for 8 minutes and hope they forget about that guy because he just murdered.
Yeah. It's great. Comedy's so specific, like weird too. Like, and it's fun to see how different people develop. Like watching you guys develop over the years, you know, it's been fun to watch, especially like Joe, who I feel like you've gotten so much more confident on stage, but without losing your kind of like nervous charm.
It's still there.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Well, that's that balance too, because like especially like I would never say like you're trying to like be like nervous and like that's just how you are as a person.
Right, that's
like,
who he is.
talking
But
to you
it's also it's a genuine nervous. It's not I'm nervous to be on stage. I feel like you're comfortable on stage,
Yeah.
but you're just, you know,
I'm like nervous about being me.
you're nervous about having to breathe.
Yes. It's like I've got over the stage fright now. It's like when I tell people jokes, it's about me, so I'm just nervous they're not gonna like the jokes, and then therefore they're not gonna like me.
Can
That's
I
what
ask
it
you guys
is.
some questions?
Yeah.
Please.
What's the latest joke you've written? Like the most recent joke.
Yeah, let me look at my note because it is actually very new. I told it last week trying to get it in there. I have this corporate racial inclusion joke that I'm working on. And it's like I just don't know how to dive into it because it's about moving to Wisconsin. And I didn't realize like how much more white it was here until like Black History Month and like Juneteenth came up. And then like my entire workplace that has like 3 Black people working for it had like Harriet Tubman up on like our big screen as like a famous Black person. So like it's very hard to like ease into that with predominantly white crowds, one, and 2, white crowds that think it's impossible to laugh at anything that's racial, but it's not
like,
racist. So it's like
Yeah,
one of those,
that's-
like, if
that's a-
there's Black people in the crowd, they love it. Like, because they're
Right.
like, oh, yeah, somebody from the outside sees it. And
Mhm.
I've even, like, the last time I told it, I called it out. I was like, you see, like, the 3 Black people here are dying. This is what happens when you actually talk to Black people and know what's okay. And
Mhm.
then, like, the crowd was, like, fine with it.
Right.
And it's just real weird.
Now that's a lot more difficult than my joke about twist ties. I'm trying to do more like one-liner type stuff right now. I just have a joke, and it was like a tweet, and I'm like, I'm gonna try this on stage. It's actually been working pretty well, and basically, it's if twist ties screamed when you twist them back together, my kids would never know.
Yeah, I saw that tweet, and I knew that, like, and I say this again, this sounds like it would be a slight.
Just
but I
say what
promise
you're
it's
gonna
not.
say, you passive aggressive piece of shit.
I'm not being passive aggressive. I know like how when I say certain things, they can come off as like a shitty thing, but it's like you're one of my favorite like comedians to watch actually work a crowd and then like ease them into whatever you're about to do next. Like you did a set at the Funny Stop where you're like, I'm gonna do some dark humor. Is that okay? And then you like hit them with like a 5 out of 10 on the dark, and then like then people are like, oh, this isn't dark at all. And then like the last one is actually like up there dark. So like
Yeah.
you're the best at telling the crowd what's coming and still being able to pull it off. But like by doing it in such like I want to say like a poppy way. Because like the rest of your set's like, I'm Bill Squire and I'm happy, I'm the fun guy, blah 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 blah. And then you're like, let's do something dark, and then still deliver on it after people are like, this isn't dark at all. Like it's so fun watching that switch and seeing you use the crowd instead of like like you're not giving away your magic trick, but you're
Right.
like, are we cool? We're all cool. And like
Well,
you're
yeah,
not
and, like,
asking for permission, but you're
And the reason I like to set them up that way when I'm doing that dark material is because I feel like, because it doesn't necessarily, I mean, I have some dark jokes in my set, but I feel like it just sets up everything to be like, hey, remember these are jokes. These are
Yeah.
not statements about how I feel about the world. It is just jokes right now. And so that's why I set it up that way. And then also when I do some of the jokes that are darker, like then they go, oh, and then like as I ramp them up each time, they're like, okay, it's fun to play with that uh back and forth, where it's like, yeah, you wanted dark jokes, and then I'm giving you dark jokes, and you're like, oh, that's too dark. Well, too bad, we're going even further now.
Yeah.
And then they get excited about that.
Joe, what was your joke? I stepped on top of it.
Oh, mine or Bill's?
Yeah, your joke, your new joke.
I don't know how I feel about this one. This is the most recent. Actually, the most recent thing I wrote was a sketch, but this joke I wrote last week, where I was like, because I was watching the NBA playoffs, and they were talking about like Devin Booker, I think, or they were talking about Giannis, and they were just like, yeah, he's just built different. And I was like, no, he's built exactly how he was supposed to be built to be good at basketball. I don't know why they say that about the good players only and not the bad ones. Like, they should be saying that about the dudes on the bench that suck. But Giannis is built exactly how he needs to be built. It's not a very good joke, I realize that, but it was the most recent one that I wrote.
I get where you're going with that.
Yeah. There's nothing to it though yet. I'm not gonna tell it on stage yet.
Yeah. I'm with you.
My last Bill Squire question is my favorite thing, because like I said, I remember Bill Squire, just comedian, doing stuff at Stone Tavern, just chopping it up with everybody. My favorite thing is watching newer comics talk to Bill Squire, Cleveland legend, and watching just sometimes your face, like, because you're nice to everybody, but sometimes your face slips because you're just like, come on, dude, get the fuck out of here.
Oh, you should see it. You should see it these days, like especially with like some of the listeners, where they just like, they don't figure out that like, hey, that we had our interaction, it's time to move on. And sometimes I just have to go like full like, and that's that, and now you go.
But what's that like, having just like, because I mean, especially if they're comedians and they're gonna hang out there, like I'll throw Bill Stone right under the bus because I give him shit all the time. Like Bill Stone, it's like the dude's met you 1,000 times. He probably has your phone number. Like, how about we calm down like a little bit on the pictures and like, hey, it's Bill. Like, it's just Bill Squire. You're gonna see him
Exactly.
every week.
That's kind of how especially with comics, I'm like, I'm around, guys. Like you can talk to me, and it doesn't have to be like, like, let things happen organically. Like don't try and be my friend. And this is good advice for any comic trying to get to know another comic. Don't try and like, because I've been both sides of this, where I've been like the cool guy that's handling it well around famous people, and then I've also been the guy that was like way too gung-ho to meet one of my comedy heroes, and I tell them, like too much about myself way too fast, and it makes them weird and makes things uncomfortable. So I think it's just, just be around and be cool. And like, it's especially for me, like I like getting to know comics and knowing their stories and knowing their motivations. And, I like trying to learn from them too. Like, I think there's a lot of very funny people. Like, I don't have it all figured out. So if you're funny, I'll try and help you, and you can try and help me. And, but but don't try and like bogart my time either, because I'm also weirdly introverted at times, especially, and also wait for the show to be over. Don't try and like, especially if it's a show that I'm running, like, and you're trying to ask me all these questions. I'm like, I have a million things in my mind right now. These are after show.
Does it happen a lot? Really?
I mean, when I was running shows, yeah, it would happen a lot. Where like, especially when people figured out that I would set up the shows at Great Lakes, there'd be certain comics that would show up there that weren't on the show that were trying to get like, and that's fine. I appreciate that. But then they'd like try and have this whole conversation with me while I'm trying to set everything up. And I'm like, man, I'm trying to plug in these lights and make sure that this is all arranged properly. And you're asking me all this stuff. And it's not the time. So you got to step back and just
That's
wait.
my least favorite time, like in the like ever, for people to try and talk to me is like right before I'm about to go on stage, where you're
Yeah.
kind of like in the back and you're like trying to get out of your own head, and somebody just is like
So
telling
how
you
long you been
about their
doing
day.
this?
Yeah, yeah.
Mine's
that's-
right after. I would rather somebody like honestly, I would rather somebody come up and just like distract me from what I'm about to do. Cause like
No.
it's like I'm waiting in line for a roller coaster, and like right before you get on it, like every time I'm on a roller coaster, I get so nervous, like right before I get on. And then afterwards you have like that adrenaline dump. Like I would rather be distracted, where like I've done sets where like it went like super well, like best sets of my life. And then I come off and like at LVT once, Mary came up and she's like, "Hey, here's an idea for this joke." And I was like, "Oh yeah." But like it was just like that adrenaline dump. Like I just got done talking. Like I would much rather her have like not her specifically, but anybody be like, "Oh, this is what you should do on your upcoming set." So then it's like, all right, now I have something different. But
Yeah.
afterwards, to me, is way worse.
I get that, especially like right as soon as you step off stage. Like, and it also depends on who it is. Like if Mary and I have a close enough relationship where if I come off stage and she's like, "Hey, I had this idea," like that's absolutely fine for me. But if it were like, somebody that I didn't know and they're like, "Hey, great set, but here's how you can," I'll be like, that's not the time to do it. So I get that.
Well, and I had to text her the next day, like, "Hey, man, sorry I was so like that." It was a great idea, and obviously, I love Mary giving me notes on anything because she's
Right.
great. But it was like, hey, it was like real weird. I just came off. I fucked up, and I said "and" instead of "the," and I'm the only one who gives a shit about it. And I'm like beating myself up for 30 seconds, and then you were talking. It could have been like Jesus himself, like came and said something
Right,
to
right.
me, and I'd be out of it. And it's like obviously she was fine with it, but.
It's all right. This is the episode where we found out that Ray doesn't like Mary, and that's fine. We'll call that title the episode that.
Here's the thing. It was very hard for me not to talk
Here's the
about
thing.
Mary Santora more. Because it's
Yeah, it was
it's
super hard
fine
for me to not
talk
drop
to
any
you
names
about
either.
her. Yeah.
Yeah, it was real hard for me to not drop any
Yeah,
people's names.
I mean, Ray got Mary and Zoltan, and he got a nice list in.
Hey man, you dropped Chad Daniels and Joe Coy. Get the fuck out of here with my name drops.
Chad Daniels is. I can text them both right now if you want.
I dropped Brian Kenny's name. Pretty big.
Yeah, that's a good one.
That's a good one. Also, I feel like a fucking idiot for shaving. You guys both have really nice beards, and
I know I'm even brushing mine right now because.
Yeah, what a class move.
Like
just
yeah.
I've got a $500 microphone that you can hear me brushing my beard. That's Bill Squire.
It's not really a class. It's very unprofessional, but oh well. What are you gonna do?
7 people will listen to this. But
So
we're gonna sell 7 more albums.
It's getting lower and lower.
We exaggerate how low it is so people will share it with other people.
Is there
Joe Briggs? Oh, go ahead. I was gonna wrap it up. Yeah.
Is there anything that we did today that was a huge faux pas as far as radio or podcasting?
Allowing the guest to use a brush on his beard that you can hear audibly. That's probably the biggest thing. No, I think you guys.
So we fucking crushed it. Okay,
cool. You guys did a great job.
Did
you had like prepared questions and everything? I think you guys had a very good
prepared questions. Do you think we prepare anything? You ruined our bit by being funnier. Like our whole bit was going to be like, we always knew this young and up and coming guy was going to make it. Like that was going to be our bit for an hour.
Yeah, we were going to make up clubs that didn't exist.
This is plan B.
Well, in that case, then why you didn't stick with your bit? So
no. Well, we realized it wasn't funny almost immediately.
Joe, any shows coming? Hey, Bill Squire, did you know that Joe helps book this exclusive show? It used to be an open mic. It's called the Winchester.
Yeah.
He helps run that. It used to be an open mic, but now it's like a super special show to get on. Joe, what's the next show to get on that? I can hook you guys up so you can get on it.
Hey, that would be cool, honestly, because Joe has never booked me on that show.
What? Yeah, we have. You headlined one of them.
When was that?
I don't have the date on there.
I don't know. I feel like it's been a while. I feel like the post-pandemic ones have been like I can ask to do a set, but I haven't been asked to do the show.
I'll text you. I think we have a date coming up.
Joe, when's the next Winchester show and all that? What do you got going?
There's like hasn't been one in like 2 months because like Dean Del Rey is coming into town on Friday, and then I think it's the end of the month. I want to say it's the 27th or the 30th is 30th or 31st is Liz Mealy's doing it as well. So we haven't had the last like 2 months. Haven't really been any local people besides Jimmy. Also, I'll be at LVT tonight if you're looking for where I'll be.
I think I might go to LVT tonight too. I think I need
Yeah.
to work on some jokes.
Yeah, me too.
I'll do mine, and then of course we'll do Bill Squire last because everybody needs to buy his shit. I have a show up in Appleton area on the 17th for if anybody listens to that. And then another name drop. Zoltan's coming on the 13th of August. It's a Friday the 13th show. I think it's sold
It's
out.
not another
so-
name drop if it's the same name.
Well, I'm dropping it again so people can understand that like I also have I don't have Joe Coy's phone number, but I have like the next generation's phone number. All right.
Yeah, that's good. That's a start.
Good. It's good.
And honestly,
I feel bad.
I would not text Joe Coy right now. Chad Daniels, I would. Joe Coy, I don't think I'd get a response.
Bill Squire, Bam Bam coming out. iTunes, SoundCloud, Panda. Where can you get it?
All right, you can get it on iTunes or Amazon or Bandcamp. Those are the places like that you can buy it. You can stream it too. There's a preview track on Spotify and Pandora and stuff like that. But really would appreciate if people bought like go and buy it on and then I have a bunch of other albums if you want to go buy those too. That's always cool. So there's links in the profile on my Instagram and Twitter at Bill Squire. Hit those up and go buy it. It's only $10 and it's very good. I'm very proud of it.
Only $10, and it's completely worth it. Bill Squire rules. Thank you for doing this. I'm going to promote this. I want to let you know that you are the name of the Bill Squire triple threat or triple crown. I bounce back and forth on it. I didn't want to do it because you called it out on Facebook, so I had for an integrity move. I didn't do it, but this will be on all three. So I think we can get it on this one. So thank you for your time.
Yeah, thanks for doing this, man. This was actually like really good talking about all the comedy stuff.
Right,
that was supposed to sound sincere, and it didn't. I'm sorry. I meant to.
Yeah, Joe, we hit end and it's done.
Joe, don't go to LVT tonight. Not with that energy.
Damn, he's right.
All right, guys. Talk to you later.
All right, bye.
Everyone.